the berries are gone. The last of the dried meat disappeared 2 days ago. You haven't eaten a full meal since. Your stomach isn't just growling anymore. It's aching. And somewhere in the back of your mind, a question starts to form that no one wants to say out loud. What happens if this doesn't end soon? For roughly 95% of human history, this wasn't a hypothetical. It was a season. Sometimes it was every season. You'd think a species this exposed to starvation would have collapsed into chaos every time food got scarce. Every person for themselves. Hoarding. Betrayal. But the evidence tells a very different story, and it starts with a simple, almost boring-sounding word: sharing. Anthropologist Richard Lee spent extensive time studying the Hoansi, a hunter-gatherer people of the Kalahari Desert, and documented something that seems almost backwards by modern standards. When a hunter brought down a large animal, he didn't keep it. He couldn't. Social pressure, expectation, and custom all demanded the meat be distributed across the entire camp, often according to strict rules about who got which cut, based on kinship and who had helped with the hunt. This wasn't generosity in the way you might picture it. There was no praise for the hunter, no special status for bringing home the biggest kill. In fact, Hoansi custom actively discouraged bragging. Hunters who boasted about a kill were mocked, deliberately, to keep egos in check. Why? Because in a world where today's successful hunt could be followed by weeks of nothing, the system only worked if everyone genuinely believed they'd get their share, every single time, without needing to grovel for it. Here's the part that should genuinely surprise you. This sharing wasn't just kindness. It was a survival algorithm, running in real time. Researcher Polly Wiessner documented a practice among the Hoansi called hxaro, a long-distance gift exchange system where people gave away valued items, not for immediate return, but to build ongoing relationships stretched across dozens of kilometers. Think of it as an insurance policy with no paperwork. If your local area failed, if the animals moved on or the rains didn't come, you had a network of relationships elsewhere you could call on. People who owed you nothing on paper, but who understood, deeply, that the favor would eventually be returned when their own region ran dry. So let's reconstruct what actually happened when food ran low. It didn't start with panic. It started with movement. Groups didn't sit and starve in place, they knew, through generations of accumulated knowledge, exactly which plants survived drought, which roots stayed edible underground when everything above ground had withered. Fallback foods. Tubers. Certain tree barks. Foods that tasted terrible, took forever to prepare, and were absolutely never eaten by choice, only by necessity, kept in the back of everyone's mind as the line between hunger and starvation. Children were fed first, whenever possible. Elders, who carried the most accumulated survival knowledge, next. The able-bodied adults, the ones with the best chance of finding more food tomorrow, sometimes ate least. That sounds almost irrational, until you realize it's the opposite. Losing an elder meant losing decades of knowledge about where water pooled in a bad year, or which fallback plant wouldn't poison you. Losing a child meant losing the future entirely. The group wasn't dividing food equally. It was dividing food strategically, protecting what the group needed most to survive long-term. And the human body itself carries physical proof of just how often this system was tested and pushed to its limit. Bioarchaeologists studying ancient skeletal remains have found what are called Harris lines, thin bands visible in the long bones of the body, essentially scars left behind from periods where growth briefly stopped due to malnutrition or illness, then resumed once conditions improved. Similarly, dental enamel hypoplasia, small visible defects in tooth enamel, marks moments during childhood when the body was under such severe stress that even teeth stopped developing normally for a while. These aren't rare, isolated findings. They show up across skeletal populations from many different ancient cultures and time periods, a permanent, biological record of just how frequently early humans faced serious food shortages, and, crucially, how many of them survived to tell the tale, written right into their bones. Now here's the twist that flips everything you'd assume about scarcity. You'd expect that in the worst famines, the most selfish individuals, the ones who hoarded, who refused to share, would have had the best odds of survival. Look out for yourself first. But anthropological and archaeological evidence points the other way. Groups that maintained strong sharing networks and reciprocal obligations weathered bad seasons far better than groups that didn't, because scarcity doesn't just test food supplies. It tests trust. And the groups that had already built deep, reliable trust before the crisis hit were the ones still standing on the other side of it. Selfishness wasn't a survival advantage. It was a long-term liability. Which brings this all the way back to you, and the modern world you actually live in. You've probably never faced true, ancient-style starvation. But you've felt a smaller echo of it. The tight, anxious feeling of an unexpected expense hitting right before payday. The instinct to lean on a friend, a family member, a community, when things get genuinely hard. That instinct to build relationships before you desperately need them, to help someone out knowing, somewhere underneath conscious thought, that the favor tends to come back around eventually. That's not a modern social skill you learned in school. It's an inherited survival strategy, refined over hundreds of thousands of years by people whose lives quite literally depended on getting it right. The berries are gone. The meat ran out 2 days ago. And somewhere, in a moment exactly like this one, tens of thousands of years ago, someone shared their last piece of food with a person who couldn't pay them back that day, trusting that they would, eventually, someday, and that single act of trust is the reason you exist at all.